Hello, my name is Curtis Steele, and I am the application developer for the ProAll Commander Control System. In this video, we will go through mix entry, which includes entering your mix designs and the different calculation modes, which allows you to calculate your gate settings and the different cement ratios and auxiliary function ratios. If you have any questions after viewing the video, please call ProAll support at 403-335-9500. So to enter a new mix design into the display, if you're not going to put it onto the PC first or generate the file on the PC first before you load it into the screen, you can actually just do it right on the screen, especially if you only have 2 or 3 or whatever to do. What we're going to do here is we'll do a complete example first of all. So this is just an example and it's already here, but we're going to go to a new one. So let's just go to number 2. This is what you'll see, kind of a blank slate when you first start your mix entry. So you're going to want to enter in a name of some kind. So I'll just call this one, let's call it test 2. Enter. So some of the fields you're going to leave blank initially. So counts you're going to leave blank, the gate settings you'll leave blank. You're going to put in a value for your cement powder. So we'll just say, let's pick one, say 300 kilograms. We'll say 1,050 kilograms of stone, say 850 kilograms of sand. You're going to put in a strength, so let's just say it's 30. This isn't a real mix design, by the way. I'm just typing in values that are kind of rough values just for simulation purposes here. So your add mix as well, you can enter in a value for add mixes here. So let's just say this is 100 milliliters. Add mix 2 we'll say is 500 milliliters. You'll notice here on the add mix as well, there's a value on the bottom left-hand corner that says percent H2O. You can actually enter in what your dilution percentage would be. So for example, if you wanted to add 50% water to your add mix tank so that the flow rates are a little bit higher and it's easier to control, you can add 50% water. So when it does the calculation for the amount of add mix to put out, it'll take into account that you have 50% dilution with water. The other values you're going to enter are things like your water cement ratio and any of your auxiliary functions. So if this mix in particular had color, so you'd enter in 10 kilograms of color, you could enter in the 10 kilograms there. These two values in the bottom are your absorption rates for your materials, so those can be added in from your calibration data if you know them. Otherwise, you can just leave them at 0. To enter those values, you just tap the screen, rotate the knob to the value that you want. And that's how you do that. So once you have all the information in, just make sure you press save. And now you can go to the next step. So this is the basic calibration data. Now what we want to do is we want to ensure that we have the correct material type selected for this particular mix. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the menu. We're going to go to mixer calibration. In this case, I only have one, but Portland type 4. So that's the cement powder that I'm going to use. For the gates, we're going to use stone. Actually, we don't want to use stone 10 because there's nothing there. So we want to make sure that we're using stone 1 and sand Z in this case. So we've got stone 1 and sand Z as our main aggregate materials. So this is an important part. We got to make sure that we have the correct material selected before we go to the next step and calculate the gate settings and so on in our mixed entry screen. So we're going to go back. Now, one other thing to note before we go to calculate, in the mixer settings screen, you'll see on the bottom left here it says gate max. What that is when it's calculating the value for the gates, when you're in gates mode, it'll ensure that it doesn't go beyond a value of 13. So if you find that, if you go too high a gate setting, there's too much material or it's not a perfect or it's just too high for that particular type of material, you can actually go in here and adjust this up or down. So for example, if I wanted to say 12 should be my maximum gate height that I would want to see for those materials, then you type in a value of 12. I'll go through this in a little bit more detail shortly, but we're going to start with gates mode. There are 3 different calculation modes that you can use for calculating your mix designs: ratio auto, gates mode, and ratio manual. We're going to start with gates mode, and I'll explain how that one works first. So now we're going to go back to our mix entry screen. You know that you're in the gates mode or any of the different modes by looking at the value on the top right hand of the screen here. So in this case, we've selected gates mode. So when I go to press calculate now, or this button here, calculate there, you'll see that it automatically calculates the gate heights, the number of counts per cubic meter, and it also calculates the cement ratio, or how fast the cement auger should turn relative to the belt speed. So again, remember we selected a maximum gate height of 12 from the mixer's settings screen. So it'll never go beyond 12. So in this case, gate A is at 12, gate B is 9.7. The other thing that it calculates is the amount of water in liters per cubic meter based on the water cement ratio and the amount of cement powder you've selected in your mix design. It also gives you a theoretical maximum production rate based on the values that you've entered. So if the mix auger is capable of taking away the material or mixing the material, you could theoretically get a 47.3 cubic meter per hour production rate based on this mix design. So after you've done your calculation and all the data's in here, make sure you press save to ensure the values are saved into the file that's stored on the display, and you can select this mix now and use it to make concrete. So I'm going to go back a step. We're going to talk about cement ratio, and that'll explain a little bit more what this value is here on the bottom right. So if you remember before, we picked Portland type 4, so you notice when I press calculate, it changed that to Portland type 4, and it also changed this to Stone 1 and Sand Z. So whenever you press calculate and you notice that those materials are the ones that you've selected in the calibration screen, then you know that it's using the proper values when it does its calculations. So in this case, again, Portland type 4, Stone 1, and Sand Z, and it's basically ready to go. So I'm going to go back, and we're going to go to mixer settings. We're going to change this to ratio auto. Go back to mix entry. So now the main difference between ratio auto and gates mode that you can kind of physically see here right away on the screen is that this box is no longer grayed out. You'll see that it has a blue box around it, and I can actually select that value. In gates mode, it's grayed out because the computer actually calculates it for you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this just to show you what happens when you change the cement ratio or the cement percentage. So it's at 92% right now. I'm going to go down. Let's just go down to, say, 70%. Let's enter. Recalculate. You notice by changing the speed or changing or lowering the speed of the cement auger, it's lowered the gates accordingly and increased the number of counts required to produce a cubic meter. So essentially 92% based on our maximum gate height of 12 was the maximum that the cement screw needed to turn in order to achieve maximum production rate. So by changing that down to 70%, I've actually lowered my production rate, or max theoretical production rate, to 36.1 cubic meters per hour. So if I go back, change that back to 92, recalculate, you see everything goes back up to a higher setting. So essentially what you're doing is you're controlling your production rate based on the percentage. So it just gives you another option if you want to have more control over your gate settings and your max production rates. You can go into ratio auto mode, change that value, and everything will adjust accordingly. So the main difference between ratio auto and ratio manual, I'll show you here. So if we go to mix select, you'll notice that these values are grayed out, so you can't actually change them. So we'll go to the one we just did. So again, 92%, right? I can't change it. Now if I go back to ratio manual, now from the mix select screen, the boxes have are blue now, so essentially I can change my values from the mix select screen. This is really only used in the case of color. Some operators like to have the ability to tweak their color on the fly outside of the mix design. Some operators don't, so it's really just a preference thing for ratio manual, but essentially that's the only difference between ratio manual and ratio auto. As far as the mix entry screen is concerned, it's exactly the same. So ratio manual, you can adjust the value, press calculate, and it'll recalculate the mix design. Thanks for watching this video, and please contact ProAll support if you have any further questions.